Square. Uh, ooh. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lincoln Square. I'm Andra Watkins. Sam Osterhout is not with us this week because he is recording another show with Joe Trippi right now. And so I am joined by the lovely Ryan Wiggins, the Chief of Staff for the Lincoln Project. And do you want to say hey, Ryan?
Hello. I am joined by my parents' wonderful wall of crosses behind me. I feel like it was a really good way to do this particular show.
It's like the perfect backdrop,
I know,
actually.
right? It's almost like I planned it.
So we're here today to talk about the Ole Miss spectacle between J.D. Vance and Erica Kirk and his statements about his wife. I grew up in Christian nationalism and left it 2 decades ago. Ryan, you're a recent departure from
I
Christian
am.
nationalism. So we have that different perspective that,
Yes.
I've got 2 decades of deconstruction behind me. You're more recent. So we can talk about that some along the way. But I really thought that JD Vance's comments at Ole Miss were interesting. A lot of people have talked about pleather pants and illicit clinches and speculated about what might be happening behind the scenes. And I really don't care about all that. I grew up in a church that taught, a white Christian nationalist church that taught that Christians should only marry other Christians. And
Yep.
to marry a non believer was a term called being unequally yoked. And I don't know if that's a term that you have also heard on your journey through Christian nationalism, or if
Well,
it's just a weird one from my journey.
I had never heard unequally yoked, but I can say I found this all really fascinating as somebody who also grew up evangelical and has left that and has gone to a church that follows Christ more than they're worried about worshiping him and making him, God or Jesus the warrior.
Hmm.
In my church, as a United Methodist, we don't believe that. We believe that everyone is welcome at the table of Christ, and we believe that you can go to church whether you believe. You can be completely agnostic. You can be an atheist, and you're going to still find the same acceptance and the same love that a Christian would find in the church. So for me, this was a really interesting dog whistle on JD's
Hmm.
part. And I think that, you were talking about all of the speculation and all that stuff. I think that what people are really missing here is exactly what you said. There's nothing more holy in the church than a marriage, right? It's blessed by God. And you are putting your wife on a stage. You are sitting here and you are talking about another woman being more godly. You are talking about another woman being something that you wish your wife could live up to. That is cheating. Just
Hmm.
period. Like that in and of itself, that's lust. That maybe not sexual lust, even though I think that we saw some of that too, but that is lusting for something that isn't your spouse. And to do that to her on a national stage is not doing what the Bible would say to do, where you have to respect your wife. You should love your wife like you love the church. Well, if he's loving his wife like he loves the church, then he doesn't really have a whole lot of respect for the church, because you don't do that to your spouse, no matter how you feel. And I've seen Christian nationalists defend this and say, well, there's nothing wrong with a uh, bisecular household wanting the other person to experience what they want. Yes, but love is love. And love means you accept people as they are. I mean, you fell in love with this woman. You know, what she believes should not have anything to do with your love for this woman or your respect for this woman or how you would treat this woman. And you definitely, under no circumstance, should be condemning her and in public on a international stage. Like, it was really, I felt really bad for Usha for this. Like, I really did. It was really tough to watch.
I didn't, because and before I go on with that statement, I want to say that I'm sure there are a lot of Christians here, and every week we come here and we talk about Christian nationalism, And there are probably a lot of Christians here who are like, I've never heard this stuff before, and this isn't what I practice and what I believe. So it's really important for Christians to understand what Christian nationalism is, because Christians are in some of the best positions to say this is not even remotely what
That's right.
Christianity is about, like you just did. So, I'm not here to rail on Christianity every week. I'm here to
Whoa.
help Christians understand how Christian nationalism is different. So I didn't feel bad about Usha at all, because I gave two scenarios for
Mhm.
what probably happened. Those two, she manages him, and he's talked a lot about how she manages him. And I think any bit of palatability that JD Vance manages to project comes from her managing him. So he's
Okay.
just so unlikable.
He is. This is fair.
And so, I suspect that they may have talked beforehand about how he could address this planted question, because I think it was clearly a planted question. And he was supposed to say something along those lines to make it seem like, yeah, I really wish my wife were a Christian and we really believe the same things, but I love her and respect her right to believe whatever she wants. And that's essentially what he tried to say, but he botched it
You
because he's
botched it.
him, and he doesn't, he just doesn't read the room. And things that come out of his mouth very often are not probably what she coached him exactly to say, to be more palatable and likable. So, it didn't land the way they probably hoped that it would land. She's complicit in this. She has always been complicit in this. She clerked for Brett Kavanaugh, for Christ's sakes.
Fair enough.
And
That's a
he
fair
he
point. I always forget.
he wrote the, yeah, it's okay to racially profile now, Supreme Court opinion.
Yeah.
So, she knows what she married, even if he wasn't a devout Catholic or Christian when she married him in 2014. So I don't feel sorry for her at all. But the other thing that this might have been doing, that I said Monday, is queuing this up for JD Vance to divorce his wife because
Yes.
they are equally yoked. So what do you think of that?
I think I mean, that's what I saw, right? And that's when I said I feel sorry for her. One of the reasons that I do, as a wife, my husband is amazingly loyal and super faithful and puts up with all of my bull crap. But as a wife, I saw infidelity. And I saw infidelity, like I said, not necessarily sexual infidelity. I saw infidelity. I saw a closeness with Erica Kirk that was not normal for a married man.
Mhm.
And I feel sorry for any woman who is losing her spouse to his ambitions and to power, as opposed to, hey, this just isn't working out for either one of us. Then, let's be amicable about this. This is putting his children in a weird spot. I mean, his children are also part Hindu. And so, I mean, I found this absolutely as him setting himself up. And Peter Thiel and all of these people who are behind him, who launched him in the first place, setting him up to launch for a presidential. And
Mhm.
they know that in their base, they're the GOP, you're not going to have people who are going to support. I mean, we've had a hard time getting a Mormon elected, right? We've had a hard time getting people, Catholics in the past, elected.
Mhm.
So, I mean, the idea of a house of a Christian and a Hindu, that doesn't fit the GOP look for the White House. And I think that they're trying to position him where, look, Erica Kirk, to me, she looks trashy, but she is a decent looking woman. I mean, you can't take away the fact that, she was a beauty pageant contestant and all of this. She looks more like what the Republicans are trying to put out there. She acts more like what the Republicans are trying to put out there. She has her own following of young people that Usha does not have. And so, I
Mhm.
mean, to me, this is very much positioning. And I watched it back in a gazillion years ago when Charlie Crist married Carol for the same kind of look, right? He wanted to be a vice presidential candidate under McCain, and he got married to someone that looked like the GOP wanted it to look. That is what I think is very sad about this, is that I think that rather than upholding marriage and how sacred marriage is supposed to be, and especially to these evangelical Christians who are in the GOP, I think this is incredibly hypocritical, because rather than upholding your vow, what you're doing is you're trying to find a way into power. And that's not love. That's not, like I said, if I were Usha, I would be getting the heck out of there. And I think most of the country's with me based on the memes and everything else I've seen this week. So
Yeah, I mean, I feel absolutely slayed for his children. I mean,
yes,
it's horrible that I feel like they use their children as props
yes,
in seeking their own ambition. But that's what narcissists do. I mean, narcissists,
yes,
you are an extension of your parent. When your parent is a narcissist, you're not an
that's
individual.
correct.
So I feel really terribly for them. But for those of you who are here to learn about white Christian nationalist dog whistles, because that's what we talk about a lot, watch the space on this show that they're unfolding, because JD Vance, to get a divorce as a white Christian nationalist, Opus Dei adjacent Catholic,
Yep,
can only get divorced one of two ways. Jesus said you can get divorced if somebody commits adultery.
yep,
So that's one way to get a divorce. And in this context, JD Vance can never admit to committing adultery, even though, like you said, Ryan, it kind of looked like he's already been unfaithful, at least emotionally,
yes,
on that stage. But he can never admit to having committed adultery in this context. So in the other context, we have the Apostle Paul writing that you can get a divorce if the non-believer wants the divorce.
yep,
It's not okay for the Christian to want the divorce, but you can't force the non-believer to stay in a marriage if they don't want to. So you poor Christian, you can grant this divorce to this non-believer and we won't hold it against you. So if he gets a divorce, that is how it's going to be spun. That
yes,
Usha wanted the divorce and she's a non-believer, so this can be a biblical divorce
yep,
that they can excuse as being okay. And that does not mean that any of the rest of us will ever be able to get a divorce just because he gets one.
yep,
That's another aspect of this, that's what they'll gaslight with. Oh, you people who are screaming about theocracy, we let JD Vance get a divorce, he got a divorce, we're not going to outlaw divorce, your people are crazy. But this will only apply to him in this situation, and that's how they'll spin it. And that still doesn't mean that anybody else is going to get a divorce or be able to get a divorce. That doesn't mean that they won't keep coming after no fault divorce. So I want people to read that. If this is how this unfolds, that is the way they will spin it. She
yes,
wanted it because she was the unbeliever, and so we had to give it to this poor man, poor him, and then
yes.
he'll go on and do whatever he does from there.
And she will be vilified both for being a non-Christian and for leaving her husband. That is exactly how this will play out.
Yes.
And I mean, and then Erica will come in and do exactly what she has been a influencer doing for years, and that's trad wife. Look at, I'm raising children. I'm supportive of my husband. I am in his shadow. I am not beside him. I am behind him. And he
Mhm.
is the head. And that all tees up for this movement. The last time I was on this show, I had a lot of people who reached out afterwards and said, "Whoa, I had no idea that evangelicalism taught that stuff. That's not what my church taught." I ran into somebody here in Pensacola who's like, "I grew up in Southern California, and what in the hell did you go through?" And I mean, I think it's really important that people understand this. We're not talking about Christianity, okay?
Mhm.
Christian nationalism is the antithesis of Christianity. Christianity is about love. Love is always first. Love is the answer. Love is how we're all connected to the divine. Okay. That is not Christian nationalism in any way, shape, or form. Christian nationalism is about fear. It's about control. It is about subservience of women and children. And, I'm actually doing another podcast this afternoon on a very similar topic. I mean, and we can talk about this one day too. Back in 2018, I fought child marriage in Florida. And I thought, this is an easy lift. Who the heck wants to marry off 10-year-old kids? Because that's what was happening here. And it turned out that it was the Pentecostals. It was Pentecostal churches. And, rather than them deal with the fact that, they had a predator in their church, they married off the little children. And that way children cannot testify, a spouse cannot testify against their husband. This is what Christian nationalism is. Okay?
Mhm.
That is what we're talking about when we're talking about this. We are talking about control. We are talking about fear. We are talking about manipulating with those two things. And we see it. We see it across the board in how they're trying to legislate. Child marriage is back on the agenda across the country again, because this is a real problem. And the GOP is not respecting it because, again, you have,
They're participating in it.
the grand old pedophile protectors, and they're just fine with marrying off people to young people if that means that they can't testify against them. So I want to make sure that the audience understands that we are talking about two very different things. Christianity exists in love and in service. Christian nationalism exists in fear and in control and in manipulation.
And here's how that idea of being unequally yoked, they are applying it to all of society. This is part of Russ Vogt's wet dream.
Yes.
This is why he says that only Christian nationalists should be elected to office and be able to serve in government, because they cannot form bonds with people in any capacity, in contractual, in employment, in the public sphere, in handshake deals, if they are not doing them with fellow believers. So they believe that being unequally yoked applies to everything. So this is why the woman in Kentucky is suing and bringing this lawsuit over being asked to marry a gay couple and refusing to do so. She believes that she should not be forming contractual agreements between people that are unbelievers. She should not be forced to participate in that. And through her, God should not be forced to participate in that. So that's part of what is informing all of this stuff that they're bringing out, that Alliance Defending Freedom is bringing lawsuits over to allow Christian nationalists to be able to say the only people who get to participate in any kind of public sphere or have a job or have any kind of contract or do any kind of business or work or exist are fellow Christian nationalists. That's not an extreme position. That this concept of being unequally yoked with unbelievers is what drives those beliefs on their part.
I agree. And I think also, for all of your viewers who are curious about what the difference really is between these two, I have two incredible documentaries that I think everybody should watch. One of them is called Bad Faith, and it's on, I think it's
I've seen it.
Yeah, it's either Netflix or Prime. That one is a really important one. The other one I know is Netflix. This is what kind of started me on my journey, and it's one called The Family. And it is talking about exactly what you are talking about the power in the Christian nationalist movement and how it's really not structured around the church. It's structured around people like Ralph Reed. And it's fascinating. And so I really strongly, both of them are long. One of them is The Family is a docuseries, but it is very much worth your time, because if you watch those things, you have a better understanding, especially, like I said, these Christians who are like, I don't understand evangelicalism. I don't understand the Christian nationalist movement. That is not what we do in my church. That's not what we do in my part of the country. Watch these documentaries, because this is what is done in the Deep South. And the Deep South is holding on. It's what happens in the Midwest. This is what's happening in these churches. And if we are going to fight it successfully, we have to understand it. And understanding it comes from understanding that, like I said, the kinds of things that are out there, absorbing the kinds of things that are out there right now that will teach you these kinds of things, because it's a very terrifying, very different version of very very skewed, very warped version of Christianity. And I just strongly encourage everybody, like, in this moment, I mean, as I'm sitting here in my parents' house, because my house is under construction and they're the ones
with
who raised me.
crosses.
Yes, they raised me in a Baptist church. What I will say is it is really important that we all lead from heart center, heart forward, love first, and try to, if we're going to make any change, we're not going to make it by beating them up over it. What we're going to do is we're going to make the change the same way Jesus made change, the same way all of the major spiritual leaders for every religion made change. And that is, you love and you show compassion, you show empathy, you have conversations where you are living your witness as opposed to just speaking it. And I think that goes a lot further, because love always wins. Love is always going to beat hate. Always, 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 always. But that means that the people right now, like me, who absolutely, truly do hate what is happening to the church and what is happening to our country, and this whole Christian nationalist, white nationalist movement that has nothing to do with Christianity, I want to hate these people, because they're bastardizing my faith, they're bastardizing my religion, they're bastardizing everything I grew up with. We can't hate. We can't. We have to address this from a place of compassion and understanding. Like we talked about the last time I was on here, these people are taught from a very young age to not question. They don't have the critical thinking skills that some of us have, that most of us do have. Most of us, at least in this middle space, most of us in this, we're trying to change the space have. They were taught that that was a sin from the time they were in preschool, to question. So we have to make questioning not scary. And I think
break the yoke. That's what we said today. We have to break the yoke.
We have to break the yoke. We have to show them that love is the answer. It's not any one religion. It's not Judaism or, the Muslim religion or Christianity or it is love. Love is the heart of all of it. Compassion is the heart of all of it. And if we lead from that space,
understand that there are also people in this community listening to us too, who have been really harmed by Christian nationalism.
Yes.
And who may carry some, I'm one of those people.
Spiritual abuse is real. Me too.
Severe scars from it.
Yes.
And so, I don't have the capacity all the time to engage in these conversations with people. I don't hate them. I want them to break the yoke, but I don't always have the capacity to interact, because so many of these interactions become abusive for me.
Yes.
Or remind me of that abuse. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
So, we can all play different roles in helping Christian nationalists break this yoke and come out of this. It's not one thing or another thing that we have to do. We don't have to follow their rules of this is the only way.
I agree.
We have different tools.
I agree. I think that is absolutely true. But I do believe that it all has to come from a place of compassion. It cannot, you cannot, there's a saying, hurt people hurt people. And I was one of those hurt people who hurt people, right? Like, I grew up in spiritual abuse, not from my parents, definitely from the youth ministers and stuff in my church. Once my parents figured that out, they were pretty upset about it. But you've got to understand that, like, you got to come at it from compassion. You got to come at it from, you can't let your hurt dictate how you're talking to these people. You have to understand that these people may share the mindset that hurt you, but they did not hurt you. And they are currently being hurt without realizing that they're being hurt. They have no idea. You look at what's happening in this country, and they're allowing so much to happen under this guise of Christian nationalism and taking over the world for Christ and all of this, but they're voting against their own healthcare. They're going to meet Christ a lot earlier than they had planned on because of the decisions that are being made. They're being manipulated. And we all have to have compassion against those who are being manipulated, especially those who are not smart enough to realize they're being manipulated or have been brought up in this brainwashing where they have no idea. You can only know what you have been exposed to. These people would say that about Christ. That's why they go tell it on the mountain. That's why missionaries. You can only be responsible for what you have been exposed to. it is up to us to expose them to something that is not hateful. It is up to us to be the opposite of what they have told them that people who are not necessarily, Christian nationalists are. We have to show them, because telling them is not ever going to work. They've been told that we're wrong. They've been told that we're here for evil. They've been told that we are trying to take Christ out of Christmas and out of everything else. That's not true, right?
But a lot of them now, as they're seeing some of these consequences, the proper response, even though it feels good, is not, well, that's what you voted for.
Yeah,
Enjoy.
no.
Yeah.
No, that is not what they voted for, because they didn't understand. They were not exposed to the same information we have. And that's another big documentary I recommend, Social Network, or The Social Problem. Both of those really good, because it shows you are going to get in your algorithms anywhere you are online something that already tracks with what they've already been following you, so they're getting confirmation bias. They're not looking for anything to contradict that. They're not getting exposed to anything that contradicts that. We cannot hold them responsible for things they have not been exposed to. It is up to us as followers of Christ to practice that level of empathy, to practice that level of compassion, and to come to them and expose them to what this really is all about. And like I said, that is about love. If you can feel loved and you can feel accepted and you can get away from the fear, right? Because that is what has these people. They're scared. They're going to go to hell. They're scared. This country is going to go to hell. This world is going to go to hell. They're so scared. And if you can show them love and compassion and acceptance, even in their fear, even in their incredible wrongness, you have taken steps to bringing them out of it. And that's the only way to do it.
Well, this has been another lovely conversation with you, Ryan. I really appreciate your taking the time to chat in Sam's place. It's nice to see your face and see your smile and see all the crosses.
All the crosses. My mom collects them. We have some really cool ones everywhere. I mean, but yes, in fact, I told her, I was like, I have to use your house. My house is under construction. I am going in front of the cross wall. And she's like, are you sure? I was like, I'm positive. It's a great background for what I'm talking about today. So I always appreciate coming on. I love talking about this stuff. I mean, as chief of staff of Lincoln, it's not often that I get to talk about my faith. We're talking about saving the country. You can save the country through your faith. You just have to know how to apply it. And so I always appreciate it. And I will come on and talk to you guys about anything, anytime, because this is so, so, so important in understanding where we are as a country and how to get out of it.
Well, it's lovely to be here with you, and I look forward to doing this again really soon.
Yes.
Everybody, thanks for coming, and go out and have a great rest of your day. Keep resisting, keep being nonviolent, keep taking care of the vulnerable, and take care of each other, love each other. Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.